Welcome to the live stream for August 9th, 2017. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it runs for right around 3 hours. If you have a question for the live stream, you can email me directly. My email is deardana@thriveafterabuse.com, and I will do my best to answer it on the show. So, welcome. We've got lots of people hopping on tonight. Kevin, welcome. West Coast, Bright Blue, Dee Dee, Elbaz, Ileana, Courtney, welcome, welcome. Cole, how is everybody doing? How's your week going? Antonia, Dee Dee says, you look beautiful. Well, thank you so much. In all fairness, it's the light. I got a new light for my birthday, and it does wonders. Elbaz says, Dana, I binged listened to A Beautiful, Terrible Thing this week. Wow. Have you read it yet? I have not. I haven't even heard of it, but I'm adding it to the list. The list over here. Dee Dee says, East Point, Michigan, here in the house. Welcome. Yay, Michigan. Namal is here. Welcome. Pamela, Della, Gamer Christina. Shara says she started reading Psychopath Free yesterday. Yeah, that's a fantastic book. Okay, I'm writing this down. Beautiful, terrible thing. That sounds like a good title and a good book. She says, oh, it's about a sociopath from hell, just like mine, but so redeeming. Lucy, hello. Richard asks, Dana, any new subjects in playlists? Not sure what you're asking there. Season says Psychopath Free has a new book coming out. That's cool. I did not know that. And speaking of books coming out, my book, which was an epic fail when it first came out because I uploaded it all wrong. Oh my gosh. Oh, I could write a book on what not to do when you write a book. Um, should hopefully be out in like a week. I'm hoping to get it back from the formatting people tomorrow, but we'll see. Gamer Christina says she just finished reading the Respect Me rules, and that book is wonderful. Thank you so much for your question and answer about it. I'm so glad you liked it. I thought it was a pretty good book too. That was a recommendation by Lucy, who actually recommended, I think, pretty much all of the books from here on to the end of 2017. Oh, Richard says, check your playlist settings, maybe. Ooh, that sounds concerning. I wonder. I had an issue. It was the weirdest thing. I had somebody upload some issues, or not some issues. I had some people upload some like porn to my playlist. I don't even know how that happened because I don't know. I don't know. So I will check those. Kristen says, "Thank you so much for being here. It's total survival." Well, I'm glad that these live streams help and that this community here helps. I know how I only wish I had something like this when I was going through everything. It didn't even cross my mind to like Google it. I just thought I was me going through stuff. So I'm so glad that you guys had the self-care and the curiosity to start trying to figure it out and to realize that it wasn't you. Shiraz says that she also got Divorce Poison in the mail. That's fantastic. That's another really great book. If anybody out there is dealing with a manipulative ex that you have children with, I highly recommend that book. It's chock full of strategies and really validating information, things to think about, kind of strategies to take. It's great. Kristen says, I'm just starting this. I can't stop crying. I'm so glad you're here. Thank God. Oh, you are so welcome. And it does get easier. You just got out of the storm. So please know that you're in the thick of it, but most of your best days are still ahead of you, and that this pain isn't always this intense. Just keep moving forward. And if you don't even have the strength to move forward, have the self care to kind of hunker down and just be extra good to yourself right now. Just keep going. Okay. Oh, somebody asked what is the title of my book? So the first book that I have that's coming out is going to be called Start Here, and it'll be available on Amazon hopefully, you know, hopefully soon. If you ordered the book before, then what you got was a rough draft. So Lucy saw it. I don't know. I know George saw it. A couple other people saw it. And that was seriously like my worst case scenario as far as like writing a book could possibly go. And I used to always joke, I'm like, man, if anybody were to really see all of the notes and how I go about writing something, they would think that I'm nuts because it's just, snippets of ideas and it's just notes to myself. And half the time they don't even make sense to me. So I can only imagine what people must have been thinking when they started reading this like rough draft of the book. Oh gosh. Shiraz says, yes, psychopath free. My favorite part is the topic of who is your constant. Very eye opening. That's my favorite. That is how there's so many great things in that book, but that is the concept of a constant has gotten me through so many rough patches, especially when you start questioning yourself like, is it me or is it them? Or, just it helps a person to get grounded. Fruity Fruity Sriracha says, "Are there any books on covert or altruistic narcissists? How do we diagnose a narcissist? I'm so confused. Is Amazon the only place where I can find your book?" Uh, so when my book comes out, it'll be on Amazon, and then I plan on doing it in print too, so you can eventually order it. And then I also plan on doing it like as an Audible book as well. So um as far as diagnosing a narcissist, it's I wouldn't even necessarily recommend trying to go down that rabbit hole because it just gets a person all confused. I would encourage you to focus more on the behavior that you're seeing. So lots of manipulative people can come across as like really great, caring, charismatic people and then be something totally different. And normal people don't have like two radically different sides to themselves like this. And so if you're seeing that, if you're seeing a person who comes across as, a really, I don't know, really good person, but then is really destructive, um, that's a problem. And label aside, they don't have to be a full out narcissist in order for them to cause a tremendous amount of destruction in your life. Because there's a lot, like there's a lot of really charismatic, likable people out there, and not all narcissists come across in the same way too. I think that's important to talk about. um, Not all of them have this like switch that's flipped that's so visible. I mean, some like, kind of the Bill Cosbys of the world can come across as really charismatic, really charming, kind of world's greatest guy, and then have this dark side to them. And, I don't know, obviously, like, I don't know what his wife experienced, but I know, like, here's another example, like with my grandfather, very charismatic, very likable, had this dark side to him. I don't, and I, of course, was a child, but I don't, he didn't really have those. He wasn't like verbally abusive in the sense that many narcissists are. He didn't have a lot of that same type of behavior, but he was very exploitative and he was very manipulative. And there was a lot of gaslighting and triangulating and a double life. And any one of those things is problematic. Jamie says, I'm so sad, you guys. It's been 3 months since I left him, and I don't know if I'm strong enough to stay away. Well, this would be a good time to, write out your for when you're miss him list if you don't already have that, and to go back and read it if you're starting to feel pulled to text him or to respond to messages or what have you. And it can really help if if there's this void left in your life by this person, to get busy filling the void and get busy filling it in positive ways. So new hobbies, going to the gym, spending time with friends. I'm a huge fan of meetup.com. Really just pouring your time and energy into other things, because when you do that, there's going to be less of that void, and you're not going to find yourself being so bored or lonely or sad, because you're filling up all of that time. Okay, let me scroll up here. Oh, somebody had asked what book we were talking about earlier, that they had a really manipulative ex in their life. And um, the book was Divorce Poison. And somebody else, Asma, Ozma, had said she can't afford to get the book Psychopath Free, but she really wants to read it. I have notes on all the books that we've been reading, although I just remembered I still need to get my book club book notes up for Respect Me Rules. But I have notes up for Psychopath Free and for Divorce Poison on my website at thriveafterabuse.com. You go to book club and then book club notes, and you can read that. And then also, I believe on the forum there's also kind of a discussion about both of those books. Totally, totally worth it if you can't get the book itself. But, and that might be something too. You can ask your library to see if they can get it, because both of those books are fantastic. And you know it's I think books in general, every time a person reads it, you're going to get something different out of it, and it's just different parts are going to resonate with you at different times in your life. Hold on a second. Oh, delightful. Okay. Yes, Travis was just letting me know that, yeah, somebody hacked into my playlist again and put up a bunch of porn. I don't know how they're doing that, because that's incredibly unnerving, seeing how I keep changing my passwords. Good times. So I will be dealing with that tonight. I apologize if you guys were in there and saw a bunch of stuff you didn't want to see. Um, Gamer Christina says, I feel like such a bitch when I go gray rock. I can't seem to do it when I'm looking him in the eyes. It's hard. It takes practice, and I would encourage you to practice when he's not around. And then once you see the manipulations for what they are, you truly, truly see them for what they are. It does become a lot easier, but it takes practice. And Ozma is talking about a friend of hers that she's not sure if she's a covert narcissist or what. Again, it kind of goes back to figuring out kind of what you want in your life, and put that label aside for a second. So if your friend has some behavior that is hurtful or harmful to you or others, and that kind of falls within that deal breaker territory for you, it's okay to walk away from friendships like that. Like, you don't need to wait until things get really, really bad, or till she really does you a lot of harm in order to walk away. Like, you can start kind of distancing yourself now. And somebody had asked about, is it normal to feel revenge or to want revenge? Completely. It's completely normal. You were violated and you were victimized. And it's normal once that fog clears and we realize that we were taken advantage of and that we were exploited and that we were dragged through the dirt, to be really, really angry about that and to want vengeance. And it's a really difficult thing because they're so manipulative. It can be really hard for people to really truly get justice. And I encourage, at a minimum, to focus on the realization of, the best revenge is a good life. And to take all of that energy and all of that anger and to try to channel it into something positive. No matter what, no matter how big or how small. It might mean organizing your junk drawer, or vacuuming out your car, or painting your toenails, or going for a run. These things, and just realize that every little thing that you're doing, that you're moving in this positive direction, it's a small victory. And it's you declaring that you're not going to let this sink you, that you're going to take all of this intensity from these emotions and you're going to let it push you into a positive direction. It really does help. Jamie says, why, if I hate him, does it hurt so bad? This is not normal. Well, they say, there's a saying out there that anger is the bodyguard to hurt. And there's a lot of truth in that. And so when we're feeling feelings of rage and anger and hate, it's generally because we've been hurt. And those feelings of that rage and anger and hate tend to be, they're protective. They truly are like the bodyguards to our hurt. And as time passes and that anger kind of simmers down, then we can start to address the hurt that it's trying to protect. Kendra is saying, I think my daughter is a narcissist. She's 14, but she is very spiteful when she doesn't get her way. She never shows any remorse or apologizes for anything. Well, a lot of teenagers and young children too, that kind of level of narcissism is very common. And it can help if you can address it and really try to kind of nip that in the bud. I mean, she's 14, you're the adult, you can have consequences, and just say, you know what? I'm not going to be talked to like that. And if you do it again, or if you act like this again, or if you don't lose the attitude, you're not going to have your phone for the rest of the night or for the weekend or your allowance. And there starts to be consequences. Like, I expect to be treated with dignity and respect in this house, just like I will treat you with dignity and respect, but I'm not going to be treated like this. So cool it, you know? And it takes practice setting boundaries, and kids, if they haven't had boundaries, or they've had inconsistent boundaries for a long time and they've been able to get away with stuff, trying to set boundaries when they're 14, really at any age is never easy, but like the older they get, the more difficult it can be because they've been used to just running amok. And especially if your ex has if there's two different sets of kind of rules and expectations at each house, it can be incredibly difficult. But all you can do is what you have control over, which is what happens in your house. Um, JD, that's a really great question, and I have no idea. I steer clear of all that because that's not anything I would want to even remotely get involved with. Carly says, Dana, it's been 18 months since I've gone no contact, and I still think about my ex every day. How the whole relationship was a lie. I'm angry, but I have a lot more clarity. Yeah, it's it takes time. I mean, and it is. It's normal to be angry. I was angry. I mean, there's still days where I get angry if I think about it. I just don't let myself stay in anger for that long, you know? I had a friend back when all this was happening, and I was so freaking angry because I'm like, this is so not fair. Like, I am losing everything. I had to, move out of this house. I had to move in because I'm not going to stay there with them. And moved into this rental house that I had that was trashed. And so I'm like living in this, torn up, depressing house, like an hour and a half away from my job. And that was an hour and a half in good weather. I mean, it was just really awful. And I was staying with a friend. So I was working on weekends and I would go up there, I'd stay with her, and then I would come back. And um she was this really kind of no nonsense Irish gal. And she would say, I would start crying, or I would kind of, I just was so angry. And she would just say, like, okay, it's, you can feel the way you're going to feel, but feel that way for like 5 more minutes and then put a lid on it and then go do something else. She just was very no nonsense. And that really helped me at that point in my life, because it can be really easy to fall into those emotions of anger and rage and hate and revenge and stay there. So I think sometimes thinking about it in terms of, okay, you're going to be really angry, like you're going to have all this hate and revenge, all of these feelings. Give yourself a time limit for how long you're going to be there, and then force yourself to go do something else, to go watch a comedy, to go for a walk, to go out with a friend, to do something positive in your life. Abigail says, how do you suggest I tell people about him and why we divorced once it's finalized? Everybody except my parents think we are the happiest, most amazing couple. I think you don't owe people like the whole truth about what's going on. So I would say I would tailor what you tell people kind of based on the level of the relationship that you have with them. Close friends, I would tell them the truth if that feels like safe and if they feel supportive. Neighbors, people at church, family, friends, you can say whatever you want to say. You could say, and it depends too, I think, if you have children, because then it can, I guess it depends. It depends on if what you say is going to make your life worse or your children's life worse. You could just say, things weren't working out, we were done. Or you could say, you know what, he was abusive and I finally got tired of it and I left. And that's it. And then if they keep pushing for details, you don't have to talk about anything you don't want to talk about. Like, this is your life, and you know, that's totally up to you. Yeah, Inner Fire says if somebody isn't familiar with abuse, they will treat you like you're crazy. Yep. Or they'll treat you like you're overreacting. And that can feel very re-victimizing, and it is. And it's very minimizing too. So I would, like I said, I'd really tailor your message for kind of the audience, if that makes sense. Let's see. Sarah says, Dana, do you have any advice for feelings of guilt after cutting off contact with mentally abusive people? So hold on. Somebody was just saying something about the volume. I don't know what's up with the volume, if there's an issue, but um, dealing with guilt. I guess I would look at it in this way. There's several different types of guilt, and there's inappropriate, it's what's called inappropriate guilt, and then there's appropriate guilt. And appropriate guilt is when we do something wrong and we feel bad about it. Inappropriate guilt is when we don't do anything wrong but we feel bad about it. It's very common for us, a lot of us who aren't comfortable saying no or being assertive, to feel guilty and bad when we start setting boundaries and keeping ourselves safe. And that just takes practice. You know, I guess I would encourage you feel the feelings, but realize that they're not, um, they're not necessarily valid. Like in the sense of you're feeling guilt for reasons that we don't need to be feeling guilty about. So this, so kind of untangling that in your mind and realizing it's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to say no. It's okay to distance yourself from harmful people. It's going to feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. And to push through those feelings of discomfort and do what you need to do. Okay, Namal. Hey, thanks. Namal says, Dana, is losing your passion for life one of the effects? I think I already know the answer. But if it is, any ideas on how to get it back? And he included a donation for the live stream. So thank you for that. Um, yeah, losing your passion for life is one of the effects of abuse. It kind of goes hand in hand, oftentimes, with depression. It's very normal. And, if it lasts for more than a couple of months, which again, very normal. It might be worth a trip to the doctor to see about getting on something. There are some things that you can do as well, as far as, you know, getting to the gym, taking time for exercise, getting in the sunshine, taking time to have fun, doing things that you enjoy doing. These kinds of things can really help to boost your mood. Okay, SL says, Dana, do you think it's possible for an ex con to hide his past from his girlfriend for 4 to 5 years? I have a friend who is involved with an ex con, but I'm sure she doesn't know, and I know her. Oh, yeah, it's totally possible. They can hide stuff for decades. And here's the thing too, is if she has this emotional investment in her relationship with him, then she's probably not going to care. She's probably going to justify and gloss over his past and accept what excuses he has. Um, you might be able to, I don't know, you might want to call like the non-emergency police department and see like how you could find somebody, if they are a convicted felon, how to find something like that out. And you might just want to say like, hey, I came across this link the other day, and this guy is a convicted felon, and leave it at that. But I at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised doesn't if she gets upset by that or justifies it. Lou says, I would say being an ex-con is an automatic deal breaker for most people, so that's why he wouldn't disclose that info. Oh, I agree completely. Yeah. Gamer Christina says, I want to do those things to boost my mood, but I can't build up the courage to leave the house. And if and when I do leave, I can't open up to people. I get it. It's understandable. If you haven't gone to any meetup groups, that might be a way to try to get yourself out there and um, to kind of get reintegrated into society. So, and they have different groups where there's not necessarily like a lot of talking. Like they have um, book club type groups where you can go and you can just kind of listen to a discussion and where you can read the book. They have, um, cooking groups. They have groups like Reiki groups that's more about like energy. I mean, there's just all different types. They have dog park groups. There's lots and lots and lots of groups out there. So, Gamer Christina says, even if I go for a run on the street, I feel like people are thinking, what's wrong with her? And that's normal too, to unfortunately, to kind of feel like everybody's criticizing us in that, or seeing everything wrong with us. It can be very empowering, I think, to answer that voice back and just say, so what? so what? To just really not care. Like I used to be so concerned about how I looked and came across and all of that. And it took a crippling degree. It was ridiculous. And even like little things, like if I would go to the gym, I was so concerned about, I didn't want, it was like I didn't want to offend anybody. Like I didn't want to go there in grubby clothes or without looking halfway presentable. And it's actually really empowering to just go knowing that you look awful and not care, because other people frankly are more, they're concerned about what's going on with them. They really aren't looking at us. They're not, I mean, they're not judging us to the degree that we think that they are, you know. So what? Yeah. And new Chris says a great idea is to take a language class and then go to meet up for that language. I totally agree. There's a lot of different foreign language meetup groups around here that are kind of fun, like French and Italian and all kinds of things. Lily says, I don't trust my feelings anymore, and I don't know if I can trust anyone ever again. Well, Lily, I think that is also very normal. And I know how uncomfortable and awful of a feeling that is. But, I think the hardest part with abuse in general is realizing that, is being kind of so, feeling so blown apart in so many different ways, and realizing that the world is not how we thought that it was. And like somebody had mentioned earlier in the live stream with the concept of a constant, this is a really helpful concept. It's in the book Psychopath Free, and it's basically where you have a constant. It's that one, it's one person, either that, you either know in real life, or maybe that on TV or on YouTube or what have you, where you feel safe and secure and comfortable. And to think about, to use the kind of those feelings that you have with that person as a baseline for like what's healthy. And so when you're around other people, and if you start experiencing stuff that feels off or questionable or problematic, that you can think, and if you start slipping into that, is it me? Is it them? I don't know. Is this a problem? Is it not a problem? That you can go back to thinking about, okay, how do I feel around my constant? And um, it really does help to kind of ground you. So, for example, my brother is my constant. And so when I experience things that seem off, I think about, well, what would he say or do? And would he say or do that to me? Or if he were here, or if I were to text him these messages, what would he think about this? And that generally gives me that validation and confirmation of how I'm feeling. And a big part in moving forward from all of this is is moving slow. I think so many of us, if you're a good, decent person, odds are you're going to think that other people in the world are good and decent too. And it takes, unfortunately, getting tangled up with somebody like this to realize that not everybody is like us. And it's shocking. It's very eye-opening to just realize that there's people in this world that are so hateful towards others, and they do so much like devastation and damage. It's hard for us to understand that that's out there and that they wouldn't want to change. And but when we can start looking, like when we can start realizing that they are out there, and that we can avoid them, you know now, knowing what to look for, like what is manipulative behavior, how does it feel, what is abusive behavior, how does it feel, and going slow when getting to know new people and not letting them set the pace of the relationship. So abusive, manipulative people tend to like to create this kind of whirlwind dynamic where very quickly, you're, or their target or whoever is pulled in, and things just like they move really fast. And so, and then that can be really problematic. So, but you are in charge. You can take a few steps back and just say, you know, like this is what I'm comfortable with. This is what I'm not comfortable with. If you're, for those people that are out there and they're starting to date again, somebody's wanting to text or talk to you too much, and if it's not comfortable, to you don't have to respond to every single text. You don't have to respond right away. If they start pushing you or making it seem like you've got issues because you're not going at the pace they want to go at, then realizing that it's not you, it's them. Like, you're setting your boundary, and if they don't respect that, then that's a problem. And it's the same thing with friends or anybody else. But it's really learning to kind of see the world through a different set of eyes and just taking things really slow. Oh, I agree. Patania says, I will never understand how a mother can treat her daughter the exact same way her own mother treated her and never ever learn from the pain of her own life. It makes no sense to me. Yeah, I agree. I like that boggles my mind. And what's even crazier about that is oftentimes abusive people, if they have been abused as a child, when they become that abusive parent, they'll even justify their actions and say, well, my mom or my dad beat me with a belt and I turned out okay. And so not only are they justifying it, they're twisting it into, this is what a good parent does. I've really disciplined my children, and like it's because I care. And the level of justification from them is through the roof. It's sick, 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 sick. Okay, let me scroll up here a little bit. Okay. Yeah, Inner Fire says, my dad was like that too. It doesn't make sense. Same with my mom. I know you would think like if somebody was hurt, that they would go out of their way to never do that to anybody else because they know how awful it feels. I think that's what's so confusing to us is like that's how we would react to something like this. And so it's just so foreign that somebody else wouldn't. It just doesn't compute. Okay, Kristen asks, how do I not attract this again? So here's the thing. So narcissists, emotional manipulators of any kind, they are attracted to all kinds of people and for all different kinds of reasons. So it's not so much necessarily about what you have attracted, it's more about what you are attracted to and how long you keep this in your life. And a big part of staying safe is sort of like, I think the best analogy I can make is sort of like with online dating scams or online scams in general. How when they first came out and people were getting caught up in them over and over again, right? People, they were like the Nigerian prince that had, $10 million, and he was going to send somebody, $1 million and thanks for their service. Or the online dating scam where there's this perfect seeming guy or gal but they're overseas, and you know right away they're kind of rushing intimacy and doing all this love bombing, and then people end up losing their whole life savings to this person. Once people began realizing this is a scam and this is how this goes down and these are kind of the telltale signs, then more people began staying safe from it. Emotional manipulators, because it's the same personality type that's doing that, that's actually abusing and exploiting in person. Once you can see the way that this kind of behavior goes down and what manipulative behavior looks like, what abusive behavior looks like, what problematic behavior looks like, and most importantly how it starts up, which tends to be with love bombing and this rushing of intimacy and this whirlwind situation, if you can start to see it more clearly, you're going to be less inclined to be attracted to it and less inclined to get and stay tangled up in it. But because anybody, I mean, that's the thing, is anybody can put out or put on their best face for like the first few months, and then they can, and then once the other person gets comfortable, they can become a very different person. So this is why it's so important to just take things slow and to really, and to think of it not in terms of I'm taking things slow because I'm afraid of being hurt, but think of it in terms of I'm taking things slow because I value my time and I value my emotions and I value myself because of that. So that's why it's important to take things slow. Uh, and then knowing, when things start to feel off, that trusting yourself enough to walk away from something that's problematic. That's a big part in it. Is we might struggle with trusting other people, but the reality is other people are going to let us down. They're going to be who they're going to be. They might not be a narcissist, but they might be going through a bad time in life. They might be stressed out. They might be doing whatever, and they might not be who we need them to be at that point, or who we want them to be, or who they were a year ago. They might let us down, but it's not so much trusting them to not hurt you. It's realizing that you can trust yourself enough to now from here on out keep yourself safe. That's a big mindset shift, and it's so powerful when you can do that. So Lou says, I'm about 75% healed. I now feel good about myself 15 months after the discard. You've helped me through my rock bottom. Thank you. And with the live stream donation. Lou, you are so welcome. And I'm thrilled to hear that you are doing so well. That's incredibly powerful. So thank you for sharing that. And thanks for the donation. And okay, Kristen was saying too about how do I not have this happen again too. I did this, I've done two video series, and um the red flags of a narcissist, which you can take out the word narcissist if you want and just put in there abusive person, if that makes that feel more approachable or more relatable. That's a good video series. And then I started doing a red flags of codependency series, not saying that anybody's necessarily codependent, but it's more of what people tend to look up on when they're searching for stuff. So anyways, so if that word feels re-victimizing, take that word and put it aside, because I don't definitely my intention is not to re-victimize anybody. So think about it in terms of like red flags of being like of being a survivor of abuse, because these are the red flags that things where we have tended to have gone wrong that we can look at. And so I share a lot of my own aha moment. That's my favorite video series, and it gets the like fewest amount of views. And I love it so much because I think it's so incredibly helpful. It Not to brag, but like I just love that series. That's my favorite. Um but it talks about empty buckets. It talks about love bombing. It talks about how we tend on the receiving end of this tend to perceive this behavior, and how we tend to react, the kind of the thought process of for more of those of us on the receiving end of this kind of stuff. And um, I think it's very relatable. I think a lot of people, I share a lot of my own experiences, but talking to people in the support group, it's these videos really tend to hit home. So I would strongly encourage you to watch that series. There's maybe 7 or 8 videos in them. I for sure would watch the one on, if you're going to only watch one, I would watch the one on love bombing in the red flags of codependency series. So Hope says, I wonder what would happen to a narcissist if one day they magically started feeling guilty. they would justify it and they would minimize it. I mean, I think very few, if any, ever get to, I mean, I just have never come across one that's ever been fully accountable for their behavior. It's always been minimized and brushed off. It would be great if they truly started feeling guilty for all that they've done, but they go to such, and this is why they go to such great lengths to gaslight, to deny, to deflect, to lie, to cover up. It's because they can't, like, they can't handle the truth, is why. And when we feel guilty about something, it's when we're acknowledging that we've done something wrong. But if they can't acknowledge that they've done something wrong, they're going to continue to fight that and all of that, like the lying, the deflecting, the triangulating, the gaslighting, the all of this is like pushing it away and making it not their fault because they don't want it, they can't handle those feelings of guilt or inadequacy. Yeah, Patania says, "Yep, minimized, brushed off, or blamed on somebody else. Like, look at what you made me do." Yep. It's very, it's very emotionally immature is really what it is. And I was reading in, so the next book that we're reading for a book club, it's Women Who Love Psychopaths, but the same, it's the same, it goes for men too. In that book, she talks about these types of disorders and kind of narcissism and antisocial, and she brings up a good point that I had never thought about before. But as far as like the different axes for diagnoses, which they're moving away from that, but I think it's important to realize that those types of disorders are also on the same axis as mental retardation. And so basically, we talk about these people are emotionally stunted, they're emotionally mature. It's, and no offense to anybody that is mentally retarded, but it's like they're emotionally retarded. And and in the book, I think she brings up a really great point of, we wouldn't ask somebody who has an IQ, who is mentally retarded to do oh gosh, sorry, that was my water bottle just popped. Oh gosh, that scared me. We wouldn't ask somebody to do some to if a person has a 70 IQ, we wouldn't ask them to do complex algebra, right? That would just that would frustrate us and it would annoy them. Like there would be no benefit to doing that. It's the same thing with the narcissist. It's like they're just not emotionally, they don't have that emotional development. They're seriously fundamentally lacking in some areas. And I think that can bring about a lot of peace to just realize they're emotionally stunted, you know. Inner peace or hope peace says, do you think that they do something good because they are guilty? Oh, I think sometimes they do. It's kind of that stereotypical scenario where the you see, I don't know, like sitcoms, right? Like the cheating husband or the husband he's bought a new sports car, comes home with a big bouquet of flowers, that kind of thing. So and it's the same obviously with female narcs. Like if somebody's doing something that they know they shouldn't be doing, sometimes they do these kind of grand gestures to make themselves look better, especially ones that are more focused on like how other people perceive them. Okay, let me scroll up here. So I have some questions. I'm just gonna hop into this. Oh, that's a very valid point. Little Miss says they do good to manipulate you and set you up for the next round of abuse. That's oftentimes very much what it is. They might get caught cheating and lying and siphoning funds and or being abusive, and then they plan a really romantic candlelight dinner. And then the target, and not all of them do this. I mean, some of them won't ever do any act of kindness because they never think that they did anything wrong. But those that do, I mean, that's kind of known as like the honeymoon cycle of an abusive relationship. It's kind of this, honeymoon cycle, and then tension building, and then explosion, and then honeymoon cycle, tension building, explosion. Very similar to cycle of narcissistic abuse, which is idealize, devalue, discard. Very similar. So, okay, let's see here. This is from Jay. I'll call her Jay. Jay, dear Dana, I have recently started listening to your podcast daily. Further, every single time I start to miss or question my decision to start separating from my husband, I turn your podcast or videos on. I've been married for almost 7 years and with him for almost 9. Since the very beginning, all the red flags were there. I didn't know what to call them, and I was so ready for a relationship and a family, I looked past everything. There is no trust, tons of projection, blaming, and lack of accountability. I've tried to rationalize it and work on myself this whole time. I've asked myself so many times, does he love me? Because it doesn't even seem like he likes me. He has been borderline physically abusive, but extremely verbally and emotionally abusive. I very early on lost all sexual desire for him and stopped almost all intimacy, which I was then accused of withholding sex as a weapon. I've questioned my intentions, my sanity, and my part in things. He has no respect for me or for those I love. He's extremely judgmental. He has been caught lying about other women. No proof of actual physical infidelity, but it wouldn't surprise me. He still has complete privacy of his cell phone and email. Everything we have is separate, even finances. I have lied to him in the past about smoking pot because he is so judgmental. He's threatened to take our kids because have smoked pot, so I stopped completely. I've overspent and racked up debt all in my name to supplement our living expenses because he pays me, quote unquote, his share when he wants to. I've been to therapy, I've started an antidepressant, and the fog is lifted. I feel good about myself and ready for peace. I feel dead inside most of the time when I think about our relationship, but I have my moments where I question if he is capable of change. We have 3 kids, 6, 4, and 1. I worry about them every day. At times, it's hard to believe, or I don't want to believe that he's incapable of change, but he's also made zero effort to show remorse or growth. Why is it so incredibly hard for me to see this? Is all of this normal? Am I the problem? Is it possible that I'm creating my situation? I love your podcast and it has helped me to see so much, but I'm still having a hard time believing this is real. And then she emailed me back. I think it was the next day. Dear Dana, this is my second email, and I think I have a better idea of what I want to ask. I feel certain in my resolve to move on that he's not going to change and that this is what's best for me. I would be lying if I said I still didn't feel the urge to tell him exactly why, but I know it's not going to turn the light bulb on for him to look at himself. Since we've separated, he keeps trying to talk to me about us working together, and it's no one's fault as an individual. I've only just agreed and said, yes, if we don't work on things, it's both of our decision. Oh, yes, if we don't work as a couple, it's both of our decision. How do I explain my reason for walking away? For feeling like the work needs to be done independently to be effective, because it's not about me and who I am. Okay, so lots of really great points in there. And uh, I think, everything that you're saying and feeling is incredibly normal. And I'm glad that you're listening, to my podcasts and videos on a daily basis. It can really help. I would encourage to join a support group as well, especially if you're at the place where you are now separated and you're deciding to move forward. As far as him changing goes, it's not so much about can a person change, because that kind of thinking too can get a person kind of lost in in the forest. Like, well, can they change? I mean, they've changed in other ways and maybe they could change now, and that can just cause a ton of confusion. What you do know for sure is that he hasn't changed yet, and he hasn't shown any desire or willingness to change. And not only that, but he's fighting the reality of his behavior. So if a person, in order for any person to change, us included, we have to be aware that there's a problem, and we have to be accountable, and we have to see it for what it is and not minimize or justify or rationalize or blame or try to excuse what we're doing. It's sort of like with an alcoholic. If an alcoholic gets to the place where they, you know, want to stop drinking, it's generally they need to fully own it. They can't stop, they can't say like, "Oh, well, I only had 7 drinks tonight. I can still handle it. I can still hold the job. Like it's totally fine." I mean, my friends all drink more than I do, so it's not a problem. And the reality is like their spouse or it is a problem in their life, and but they're just not there. They haven't seen it yet. It's very much the same with like an abusive person. If they're fighting that reality and they're like, I don't have a problem, you have a problem, or we have a problem, or um, you know, eh, like they're not owning their behavior, then it's a problem. And if he's being verbally and emotionally abusive, it's a problem. And so it's not so much, is he capable of change? Is he actually willing and able to change? Because a person could be capable of change and still never change. So I hope that that helps clear up the change question part of your email to me. Um, as far as moving forward, and you're like, I really want to explain to him I want to just point out to him all of the reasons I want a divorce. But you also mentioned you realize it's not going to help. It's not going to help. And I would encourage you to write all of that down and then take it and then burn it, because you're not going to get the closure that you're looking for with him. And when you have 3 small children like that, he is going to be in your life in some way, shape, and form for, the next 17 years. So it's it's going to be you trying to kind of navigate the waters of all of this in a way that's going to cause the least amount of damage and destruction to you and your children. So I highly recommend the book Divorce Poison. If you can find out more about that on Amazon or on my website, which is thriveafterabuse.com, go to the book club section and you can read more about that. It really talks about navigating like and doing damage control with a manipulative person that you're looking, that you're trying to leave. So I hope that that helps. I'm glad that you quit smoking marijuana, because it can, for a couple of reasons. I think a lot of people tend to start numbing out when they're being abused. It's very common. It's very common for targets of abuse to start eating or spending money or drinking or smoking or doing drugs or um, even becoming promiscuous, like doing all of these things to just kind of numb out in order to survive this situation. And it's in marijuana, depending on where you live, and states don't look favorably upon that. So I think it's good that you have stopped doing that for those reasons. And to try, I think, too, to emotionally prepare yourself as much as you possibly can for what separating is going to mean, and what kind of just navigating this divorce, and finding some coping methods that are going to be more constructive, and that don't kind of that may not lead to a slippery slope into becoming kind of like an escape, I guess. And Diana says, yeah, eating is my downfall. So, and lots of people, it's easy to get caught up in drinking and um, smoking pot and eating and all of this kind of stuff as ways to cope. And I guess just kind of just kind of watching your behavior to make sure that it's not going to a problematic place with that. So, okay, the next question is from Tanya, who says, "Hey Dana, I have a question. There is a certain very charismatic, covert, communal narcissist slash sociopath in my neck of the woods who uses a lot of religion and God for narcissistic supply, and he is doing a lot of harm in the community. What is disgraceful is that he is relying on certain injustices of this world for supply, and he's getting away with it because people are desperate to believe and horrified and impacted by this travesty. He is milking this for all it's worth and profiting from other people's despair, pain, and suffering. He has many people fooled, and I have proof, evidence, and a witness to testify to his offensive, callous, arrogant, and disrespectful behavior and sociopathic tendencies. I want to expose him, but I feel so powerless. What does one do in a situation like this? Thank you for your time." Well, this is so difficult. I mean, if you're feeling like he's defrauding people, you can always you could one option would be to you could file an anonymous tip with the IRS if he's actually taking money for all of this at like a large scale level. You could also call the non-emergency police and let them know like this guy. I would maybe frame it in terms of, I'm concerned he is defrauding people. He's preying on vulnerable people in the community, and just kind of leave it at that, because it's real easy for people to think, oh, we're making too big of a deal out of it, or we're crazy if we're saying, oh my goodness, he's using God and he's a sociopath and all of that. Like that can just feel like, oh, this is a little too much. So talk about it in terms of like he's defrauding people. I'm concerned that he's focusing in on really vulnerable people, and then see what the police say. Outside of that, if it's a small town, I think really all anybody can do when it comes to an emotional manipulator is to plant seeds of doubt in people's minds. So, saying things like, it concerns me that he's using God or that he's using these tragedies to get money out of people. Don't you find that confusing or problematic too? And just kind of planting those seeds. The challenge is to really try to do anything more than that. The people that are buying into him are not going to listen. They're not going to hear you. And then they're going to get upset because they're going to think, no, you don't see the truth. This guy, you know, like if it's religion oriented, this guy is he's this is how cults form. So they're not gonna believe anything other than what this guy is saying, which is a problem. And yeah, it's frustrating, but all we can do is all we can do is have healthy boundaries, plant seeds that something is a problem, and inform the authorities if we think that he's truly defrauding somebody. So let's hop back over. Oh, that's a good question. Sassy little Frassy. That's a cute name. Sassy little Frassy says, I'm confused as to when to give a second chance or set a firm boundary. Well, I think you can. I don't know if one negates the other. So you can have a firm boundary with somebody. I think it's more of the consequence that would be up for debate at that point, right? So you can set the boundary. So let's say, for example, if somebody calls, what could somebody do? If somebody, and here's two where deal breaker behavior comes into play. So for me, anything that's like abuse, addiction, adultery, um, you know, an attitude where they're incredibly negative or they're if I'm leaving this person's presence continually feeling like dragged down, or like I'm like they're crazy making, I'm out. Like that's not going to work for me. So but you'll have your own deal breaker stuff. So thinking about, okay, well, what's a deal breaker for you? So if they are doing something like kind of you feel like you're playing, if they're playing games with you, or if they're treating you like in the book, the Respect Me rules, I love this. They talk about If you're being treated with disdain, contempt, or hostility, this is a problem and you're being manipulated. So for me, I would add in those three too, like disdain, contempt, or hostility. I'm out the door. Like that's not workable for me. So think figuring out, okay, it's okay. It's okay to not give a person a second chance. Um, you know, like the good times could be really good, but if they flip the switch and you're seeing disdain, contempt, and hostility, and they treat you in a way that is absolutely unacceptable, it is totally okay for you to just cut that off and not do a second chance. But let's say, because setting boundaries and implementing them, it takes practice. So if you're at that place where you're like, I'm not really sure, if you want to give a person a second chance, you can. And if they are a problematic person, they're going to do something else problematic. And then you'll know, then you'll have your answer. And then you're going to, distance yourself or cut them out of your life or what have you. So I wouldn't worry necessarily too much. It's so much of this is just a learning curve. And, you know, it it's practice. It's just practice. AJ says, Hi, Dana. I keep getting my ex narcissist friends trying to add me on Facebook. They don't even know me, but I know it's because of him. They are trying to add me. Am I right to block them too? Yes, hands down. I think when we have this problematic person in our life, there tends to be this kind of peripheral, the area around them needs to be cut out as well. It's sort of like with a tumor, right? If you have a tumor in your body, the doctors, they don't just cut out the tumor itself. Oh gosh, why does this thing keep popping? Sorry, that's completely freaking me out. Okay. They don't just cut out the tumor, they cut out the surrounding area because odds are it's spread and they just can't see it yet. So they cut all that out to just kind of err on the side of caution. Very similar when you've got a cancerous person in your life, you have to kind of cut out everything that's around them. So their friends, their family, kind of, you're taking a different route to work. You're avoiding, like, you're having to really change things up and cut out being around anybody that's on good terms with them, and cutting out doing a lot of things where that might land you into running into them by accident. Davina says, I deactivated my Facebook. It's absolutely freeing. Yeah, it really is. Sometimes creating a brand new Facebook account or changing your cell phone number or changing your email address, it can be so incredibly liberating. And at first it might feel like, well, I shouldn't have to do this, right? Like, I was there. If that's what you're thinking, please know I was there too. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to change anything more in my life. Like, forget him. No. And hindsight being what it is, I really wish that I would have, because it would have given me peace of mind. And there's just no price that you can put on that. Like, it really does help to just, and it doesn't have to be forever. Like, you can, reuse that old email address or that old Facebook account down the road. But I would give it like 6 months to a year before you consider it if you're going to go that route. Just make sure too, if you do want to um, create a fake Facebook account or what have you, to not use any of the same pictures and to not befriend any of the same people, and to set that account to private, because they'll figure it out. Ah, sassy little Frassy says, yeah, right now I'm at the 42nd chance. Is a problem. Giving a person 42nd chances is a problem. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a learning curve. I mean, I used to do the same thing, thinking nobody's perfect, and this is just what it means to just keep working on things, and I've known this person since junior high, and so I don't have that many people in my life left, so I better really just, I guess, be dragged through hell with the people that are still there. I mean, I don't that was kind of my thinking, cuz the bad times with some of those people weren't that they weren't like abusively bad in the way that most people would think of it, but it's crazy. It was crazy making. It was condescending. It was critiquing. It was arguing. It was like picking fights. And I would leave this one friendship in particular completely exhausted all of the time. And it wasn't appropriate. I mean, he was married, and I'm like, I don't, this seems weird. I'm not like, I know we were friends before you got married, but like, it just doesn't feel right. And he kept saying, oh no, my wife is totally okay with me having female friends, and making it seem like I'm the old fashioned one. And finally, it just got to the point where I was like, every time he wanted to talk to me, it was always about junior high and high school when we had dated. And like, this is just not appropriate. And so finally had to cut it off after giving multiple chances, because the good times were so good, and he was a fun guy to be around until he was being crazy making, and then I couldn't handle it. But yeah, 42, Andy says 42 chances is too many, and I would agree. So yeah, thinking about kind of where is your line in the sand, and then sticking to it. But so much of setting a boundary is having a consequence, and that ultimate consequence is us walking away and just saying, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. So, let's see. Maria says, my former self said no when I was burned out over the constant abuse, but now I say it calmly at the first sign of a boundary violation. And wow, how different all my relationships are, especially with myself. Yeah, I love that. That's so true. It's so many times when, if really outrageous behavior has become our normal, and we've been sticking around for so long, to realize we don't have people, when people get out of these kinds of relationships, their internal kind of GPS system, it's like taking a magnet to a compass. Like, they just don't know which way is up, which way is down, what's problematic, what's normal. Like, they're just all over the place, and it's very common. And really, it's part of like waking up. It's part of this awareness to seeing the world in a very different way, and that's kind of what all of that confusion and kind of discombobulation is about. And realizing, um it's okay and it's healthy for us to have deal breakers, and we don't have to stay in a problematic situation and wait for it to get like extremely, like, we don't have to wait until we can't hang on anymore in order to leave. Like, if it's a problem to you, if you're seeing boundary violations, if something doesn't sit right, you can leave. It's so, maybe sounds so obvious, but that, I know for me, was incredibly profound. So, as you're exploring the boundaries and deal breakers with where you're at in your life, realize that you are in control, and you don't have to be dragged through hell and wait until things get so bad that you can no longer hang on anymore. Like, you can just decide, I'm putting the rope down, and you can walk off. Andy says, I'm learning to set boundaries and deal breakers, and it's huge. And walking away is tough, but it's the best. Yeah, it is tough. But I think oftentimes, if we're not walking away when we're seeing problematic behavior, then what's really going on is it's like delayed disappointment or delayed pain of some kind. You know, like, we can only justify it for so long. Again, this kind of goes back to the whole concept of a constant. If you think about your constant and how you, how you feel around them, and think, okay, I don't feel this way around them. Like, I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I don't feel invalidated or re-victimized or, um, used, abused, exploited, kind of ground down. I don't have these feelings when I'm around them, but I do around this other person. And so that's a problem. Jessica says, yeah, this is what my ex did. He dragged me through hell. She says, I went gray rock on him before I knew what gray rock was. Yeah, good for you. Mantis, that's a very valid point. It says, reality is subjective. Many of those who feel that they are victims of narcissism are actually narcissists. It's very sad. They truly believe that they've been mistreated because they are that selfish. Yeah. Yeah, I could see it. I mean, it's such a again, a kind of emotionally stunted mentality of, oh, you set a boundary with me, you told me no. Um, you know, you're mean, you're bad, you're hurtful, you're controlling, you're abusive, you're manipulative, when really it's like, no dude, like, I'm not going to just let you run like a bull through a china shop. That is my life. Like, it's not okay for you to treat me like that. But for them, because they feel so justified in everything that they're doing, they don't see a problem with it. They see a problem with us having a problem with them, but they don't see a problem with their behavior, and they just keep doing it. Dana says, that's true. I feel so different now, and I'm setting more boundaries and getting stronger. Yeah, it's huge. Good for you. Good for you. It takes practice. It really does. I mean, it's so wild because once you get going on this and like you can kind of see, you have some of these aha moments and you start implementing some of this stuff where your life will be radically different in like 5 months from now. It's crazy. Like the trajectory, like you don't need to have all the answers or do everything like quote unquote perfect. Just changing a few things here and there. It's like a line. Like if you just change the trajectory by a few degrees, where it goes in a few months is a very different place. And you'll look back and you'll think, oh my goodness, old me would have continued to justify and excuse this. Like new me, easily saw this train coming down the tracks and just hopped off. Like, it's really, it's just so cool and so eye opening to see how differently, to think about how differently old you and new you would respond. Yeah, Andrea says that's so true. The positive change can snowball once you start saying no to toxic people, patterns, and substances. I have lived it. Yep. It's so true. It's, you just see it. You see it so clearly. And this is the other part too, is the more we wake up to this, the more you'll start to also notice not only what is problematic, but you'll also start to notice how many other people are still really asleep to this. And that can be its own level of crazy making. So, take comfort in realizing, okay, these are like, this is my truth. This is what I need in my life. These are my boundaries, my deal breakers. I don't need to defend them or argue them or explain them or anything to anybody. And if other people continue to push this, or they're bringing toxicity into my life, then I'm just going to have to keep pruning this, you know, the tree back, because I value my safety and my sanity and peace. I value having peace in my life. Kevin says, I got accepted to go to school this August for psychology, but I don't know if I'm ready for it or not. It's been stressing me out. Well, Kevin, you can always, I think really what you're going to find to be the most stressful part of that is how you're not going to be taught any of this, and how what you're going to find is that nobody in the class, and probably including your instructor, I know that sounds mm, grandiose of me maybe, but I know, like, you're gonna realize how few people really do know about this, and how incredibly frustrating and infuriating that's going to be. So that can be the hardest part of it all. But keep in mind too, when you're taking these classes, you can always, like, you can always take a break after the semester is over, or take totally different classes, or what have you. I think what you'll find if you study psychology, it's going to be a lot more of different kind of psychodynamic theory. So like Freud, Erickson, um, oh, I don't know. There's so many out there, like different approaches, like diversity, kind of cultural sensitivity, um, I don't know, reflective listening, these kinds of things. It's not so much about kind of what is abusive behavior. I don't know. I don't know. Jessica says, why is this stuff not taught? I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. Because to me, it's why people get into, it's why people seek out a therapist to begin with, is because the odds are they've experienced some sort of abuse, and like they're looking for help. So it's, I don't know. I get really frustrated with it. Nina says, I've sold cars, was a student at a prestigious school. I am creative, and I've ended up completely tricked. It is unbelievable. Yeah, they're master manipulators, you know, and anybody can get tangled up in it. I think the best example of this on a mass level is if you look at Germany, look at World War II Germany, okay? How the Germans got tangled up with Hitler, and how that went to such an awful place. I mean, it wound up with Holocaust camps. And Hitler was able to effectively manipulate a whole country full of people. Now, were all of those German people codependent? Did they all have bad childhoods? Did they all have poor boundaries? Like, what was really going on there? And my take on it is no, right? Like, it was a wide range of people that made up, and that still make up, Germany. But what it was is they had, you know, they were out of previous wars. They had kind of this fragmented cultural identity. They had a lot of individual vulnerabilities, and they had kind of this national sense of vulnerability. They didn't have really a good sense, like a good national identity. And Hitler came in and he took all of this and was like, I'm changing things. And he just manipulated everybody. And it started off good. I mean, it started off, he was really big into education. He was really big into building the freeway system, building automobiles. He did a lot of good things for Germany. And so kind of got everybody down this path of, yeah, he's this amazing leader. And then things began taking this twist. And it starts slowly. Like, it didn't, his dictatorship didn't start off with the concentration camps. It started off with him being very charismatic and the promise of hope and promise of change and all of this. And then it just slowly began taking this dark turn. but it was slow and it was subtle. First kind of the German people or the Jewish people, okay, now you no longer have, you know, the right to property. Now you no longer have the right to, you have to be inside during certain hours. You now have a curfew. Okay, now you have to wear a gold star. It was the slippery slope into madness, is what it was. And so the point being is that anybody can be tricked by these people if you're not aware, if you don't have a solid enough sense, if we don't have a solid sense of, kind of what deal breaker stuff is. And unfortunately, for most of us, it takes getting tangled up with people like this for us to realize it, because this manipulation is so slow and so steady and so stealthy that we're not even aware that it's happening. So it's not you. It's not just you. It can happen. And it does. It can happen to anybody. I mean, I get emails all the time from people that are, doctors, lawyers, judges, police officers, um, therapists, people that are like, Dana, I should have known better. And how did this happen to me? I'm so embarrassed. And it's not. I mean, if anything, frankly, it's when you're working in those kinds of fields that it's it's almost easier for a person to be manipulated, because it's easy to second guess themselves, thinking like, oh well, maybe I'm on hyper alert for problematic behavior. Maybe it's because I work around, if you're a police officer, like I work around criminals all day long. Maybe I'm just reading too much into this. Or if you're a therapist, thinking like, maybe it's because I see relationship problems every single day and I'm making something into something it's not. Like I'm being too hyper vigilant. But the reality is, no, like you're seeing the situation clearly. It's just we wish we weren't. And we kind of we deny it and get sucked in. Little Rocket. Okay, this is a very interesting comment and a very relatable one. Little Rocket says, I feel defeated when I walk away from the toxicity. I feel like they won. I think you're not alone in feeling that way. I think a lot of people tend to want to stay because they want to fight to be heard. They want to fight to win. They're like, this is a freaking problem. I want you to see that it's a problem. And I really want to argue with you until you realize that you're the problem, because your behavior is really freaking crazy. And I really want you to see that. And it's hard. It's so incredibly hard to realize that this is a bunch of insanity. It's like functional psychosis. Like these people are just insane. And to walk away from the madness and to realize that this is like you walking away and living a good life is you winning. But to try to stick around and talk sense into nonsensical people is just gonna cause you it, it it's madness. It'll make you go crazy. Yeah, Lisa says, that's what happened to me. It was like arguing with a lamppost. Yeah. Let's see. Jessica says, yeah, my ex accused me of cheating on him for 2 years. He didn't want me to have male friends, but it was okay for him to have female friends. Oh, the old double standard. Yeah, the level of hypocrisy is ridiculous. And so many of them do that. It's against that little kid mentality of, I just want everything to be the way that I want it. And it's like they don't need, it's like dealing with a 4-year old. Like they just don't understand the hypocrisy in that statement. They want what they want, and they want what, like, and if they want something else too, then they want that too. Like what, it's the whole, how does it go? Like what's mine is mine, and then what's yours is mine too. Like it's just all about them all of the time. And it's, yeah, you just realize I am, this is insanity. I'm dealing with insane people. Like I got to get out of here. Okay, let's see. Sunflower says, I struggle to hold on to my sanity every day. Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. If you haven't implemented that concept of a constant, I highly recommend it. It really is helpful to, and in the book, he mentions his cat is his constant. And so I think if you don't have a person that you can point to and be like, okay, this is my constant, to think, um, okay, is there an animal that, how do you feel around them, to realize this is not you, like you're not crazy. You've been around a bunch of crazy makers, but it's not you. The Lilith says, yeah, my cats are my constant. I have no people. The crazy angry codependent says, Dana, did your two narcs act like martyrs? The oh, poor me. My life is pathetic. I get no breaks. Everyone has all the luck except me. Oh my God. My narc mom does this always. Mine were both so freaking convincing. Kinda, not to that extreme. So, like with Jack, yeah, if you were to listen to his relationships and why he doesn't have a relationship with any of his children, um, these kinds of things, it was, oh, his sister sold his business out from underneath him, and his ex won't let him see his daughter because she was most likely cheating on him, and he's not even sure if it was his daughter anyhow. And um, everybody, he would get fired supposedly for no reason. It was all just all lies, and none of it was true. So yeah, perpetual victim in that sense. The other guy, not, yeah, I guess at the tail end. I mean, oh my gosh, that relationship went so freaking crazy so fast. At the tail end, it was, he upped and left me out of the clear blue, which was so unnecessary. Like it's comical now because it was even kind of comical then because it was so unnecessary. Like we had just had a talk like a day or two before he left about um if he was feeling like he wanted to move back, to please let me know so I could make arrangements. I didn't have a job and that we could figure something out. And then he just like stages this whole event with a phone call supposedly from his son in the middle of the night. And it was just drama. And he comes upstairs and he's crying and he's like, I've got to go. I'm like, what? Okay. It just was so ridiculous. And then he leaves and I wasn't like, I didn't try to beg him back or anything. I just was like, fine. Like, are you kidding me? I was so blown away by his selfishness and immaturity that, um, like, like just go. So he left, and then I found out he went back to his wife, but then he told her that he had a was an alcoholic and he needed to go into rehab, and he convinced her to pay for rehab. And then I mean, it was just like, it just went to this Lifetime TV movie level, so crazy, so fast. And it was just all of these excuses and lies. And then his who I thought was his ex-wife and I began talking, and we began sharing texts. And oh man, I just couldn't believe everything out of his mouth was a lie. So, and of course he was making it seem, that um he was telling her that had been so miserable with me. He just couldn't wait to get out of here. And I mean, on and on and on. And he didn't tell me that he went back to her. He was like, I don't love her anymore. I mean, it was just, I can't, like, there's just so many lies that, yeah, pathological liar to say the freaking least. Um, yeah, I just done. I'm so glad that I found out. It was so awful. Oh my gosh, it was so awful. And I just felt so, I felt it, oh, it was so embarrassing because, I had been in this relationship with Jack a few years earlier. And, um, I bought Steve a truck. Like, he owed me money and then he gets the truck and then he takes off. And I'm like, I have no money left. Like, that was all of my savings and I have no job. And he knew this. And now I'm stuck. And, um, it's like he intentionally created this super dramatic exit. And, um, oh, it was just awful. I mean, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I felt so ashamed that I'd gotten tangled up with somebody like this again. And, I felt like I couldn't, even with my old friends, because I had moved to a different state at this point, when all this happened, I didn't even want to tell him what happened because I just was so embarrassed that it happened again. Awful. Yeah. So let's see here. Let me scroll. Oh, you know what? I've got some more questions. Let me do those. Some of these questions are long, so hang on here. Okay, this is from Margaret, who says, "Dear Dana, thank you for all you do. The live streams and videos have been critical in helping me sort out what has happened to me throughout my life and in finally understanding my narcissist's motives. You are a godsend." Well, thank you. "I occasionally have to deal with various forms of forced contact from a delusional, obsessed narcissist. The relationship was short, unimportant, full of narcissistic abuse, and has been dead for a very long time. After the abuse started, I was trying to avoid him and barely tolerated him, hoping he would just go away because I knew he would be difficult to deal with and couldn't handle the no, I, and he couldn't handle no. I didn't have time for this. I just had no idea how difficult he could be. I haven't responded or contacted him since the dinosaurs were here, yet he just keeps up frightening, bizarre antics ever since I let him go. He is always keeping tabs on me one way or another. Much of his forced contact involves doing very bizarre, noticeable stuff that was his hallmark. He also does typical stuff others can relate to. Many of these behaviors are designed so that only later do I realize he was there. Is he afraid of confronting me directly? The forced contact includes, but is not limited to, clandestinely following me, yet leaving clues that he has been there with third parties or other unique things. He also uses all kinds of third parties to relay messages, harass me, or get info on me. Some of the third parties confront me in very frightening ways. He calls, texts, sends mail when I haven't given him any of my info since the relationship ended a long time ago. He calls and texts from his number in fake accounts or private or spoofed numbers that can't be blocked. I never pick up the phone or respond in any way. He leaves clues that he has been monitoring my online activity. The timing of some of his forced contact coincides with very stressful events in my life. This can't be coincidence. He knows so much about my life, yet I never contact him, and there is no easy way for him to find these things out. People in my circle are on the lookout for him and anything suspicious. Law enforcement told me that they can only deal with extreme violence or death. While I have taken steps to protect myself, I can't stop most of these things, and they are very frightening and unsettling. How do you deal with the huge psychological and emotional distraction of this forced contact? How do you do what needs to be done? Document, not respond, move on, and not allow yourself to get caught up in fear. How do you fully heal when somebody keeps showing up in your life uninvited and unwanted no matter what you do? If you want full details and to hear a fully bizarre story, let me know and I'll email it to you. I bet you hear about weird stuff all the time. Thank you so much for your help. Oh boy, that's a challenge. And, this guy might have some more stuff going on besides just personality stuff. Like there might be some like mental illness there if he's that delusional and kind of that obsessive and doing things that are really bizarre. You might want to look into getting a restraining order against him. So if you have enough documentation, this is what he's doing, I would go for a restraining order. I would get some self-protection to keep it in your purse, in your car, at work, in your house, those kinds of things. I would consider getting cameras, like motion sensor cameras for your house if he's showing up there and doing bizarre things, something that, you know, will record any activity that starts going on. We just got some my boyfriend just got some motion sensor activated like night vision cameras off of Amazon. I'm not sure what brand they are, but to just kind of record around here. So doing things like that to try to give yourself peace of mind. We don't have control over flying monkeys or other people. All you have control over is yourself. And so if they do approach you, or if you know who they are, if it's the same kind of people approaching you, I would figure out a way to just try to steer clear of them as much as possible, like leave the room. Um, I would just get up and leave, kind of a thing. And it may come down to, and I would encourage you too to change your phone number. So that way, you're not trying to block numbers. Like you just have a brand new phone number that he doesn't know. And cell phone numbers, are unlisted. So just make sure that it stays unlisted and that you're not putting it online or anything like that. So it's tough. It's outside of moving to like a different city, there's probably not a whole lot other than what I encouraged you to do that you really can do. And moving might be an option just to give yourself that peace of mind and to get away from all this, because it is exhausting after time. And I there just kind of comes this limit where you're like, okay, I can only do what I can do. But if this doesn't stop and the police can't make him stop, and this guy is completely delusional, and but the police are saying he's not dangerous enough, then you've got to be able to do something to get yourself some peace of mind to where you're not continually looking over your shoulder, because that's a really hard way to live. Um, okay, so let me see if I can. Here is a question from Rocky. And Rocky, I think I answered this in the forum today, but I'm going to read it again because I think it's a really great question, and it goes, it's something that I think a lot of men and women struggle with. Oh, Missouri Cowboy, thank you. Says, trust your instincts, even in the dark. Sunflower totem. The blossom of the sunflower follows the sun each day from east to west. During the night, a sunflower blossom will turn back to the east to greet the rising sun. I like that. That's beautiful. Thank you for the donation, and thank you for that little like poem of support. I like that. So this is from Rocky. Rocky says, I really need your advice. For the first 3 months of this year, I was in a relationship with a narcissist. And yes, I am positive she is a narcissist. Well, for the last 2 months, I've been in a relationship with a woman that I'm having reservations about, but I don't know if it's paranoia from my last experience or if this one might be narcissistic as well. We went out as friends for a short while, and she asked if I thought we could try being more than friends. I said yes, but let's take it slow. Within an hour, she had me in bed. Within a few days, she was professing her feelings for me, and it almost ended it for me then. I told her to slow down, and within 2 weeks, she was telling me how much she loved me. She is constantly telling me how much she loves me, that I am her soulmate, that I am perfect inside and out, how awesome my body is, that she's never felt this way about anyone, how great my heart is, and that she can't stand to be away from me, etc. When I suggest I am not where she is yet, she says I will catch up. She is with me every spare moment, which is a lot. She has hundreds of friends, and I haven't heard anyone say anything bad about her. Every time we go somewhere, people are excited to see her and tell me what a great person she is and how lucky I am. She is a nurse and has a lot of compassion to go the extra mile to help her patients and really anyone in need. But everything I read tells me her behavior towards me is a big red flag. Is it possible that all the things she is saying are sincere? Or do you think I'm being love bombed and manipulated? And how do I tell? I really like her, but I don't want to be traumatized again if she is deceiving me. I thought after all the research I had done after the last relationship, I was educated enough to know a narc from a distance. Are there any tests I can apply to figure this out? Any advice welcome. Signed, Rocky. P.S. I am an empath with a big heart. Okay. Oh, I think so many people can relate to similar situations like this. And so there's so many points I want to touch on here. Um, okay, let's just start at the beginning. You say that you don't have the same kind of feelings that she has. She's wanting to move really quick, and that she told you to not worry that you would catch up. That's a problem, and that's a big boundary push. And she's just really kind of dragging you in this relationship full speed ahead. If you're not there, it's okay for you to not be there, and it's okay for you to hold that boundary and to say, like, you know, I don't love you. I'm not ready to move in. I think you're cool. I want to hang out, but we need to slow things way down. And not only saying that, but then doing that. So spending less time with her, because if you said you're spending all of your spare time with her, which is a lot, then that kind of in itself is problematic. Not only are you spending all of your time with this woman, but then I kind of have to question, what else is going on or not going on in your life that you're so quick to make her your whole world. So it kind of speaks, shows, or what I'm gathering from it is that, that that's a problem if you're making this woman that you're not really wild about your whole life. So I would encourage you to focus on spending time with friends, going to the gym, hobbies, things that are very nourishing and like deeply fulfilling for you versus this relationship that you're kind of lukewarm about. So as far as, could this be, how can you tell the difference between like love bombing and love, or this, is this intensity, is it real, is it sincere, or is it manipulative? The reality is there is no test. I mean, sure, there's many tests online, but they're not going to speak directly to your situation. And at the end of the day, all any of us can do is, if it feels off, which it does based on your letter to me, to slow things down. That's the only solution to this. So I can understand you being like, well, is it my old relationships? My old relationship was very similar. Even if you hadn't been through an abusive relationship, anybody that's moving at breakneck speed like this, it's just these things tend to very rarely work out. And I would just encourage, there's no downside to moving slow. If her feelings for you are sincere, they're still going to be there in a month. So you move at the pace that you're comfortable moving at. And if you're not comfortable saying, I love you, if you're not there yet, then you're not there yet. And that's okay. So, in a person, and sometimes, problematic people, they can have a lot of friends. They can seem like a really great, caring, compassionate person. This is why it's so important that you pay attention to how you feel about the situation. And and to take things at your speed. Because your friends, you might even get a therapist. Somebody might say, "You know what? You're just afraid to love. This is this is what it is. Everything about this relationship seems great, but so you've got your own stuff to work on." I'm here to tell you it's really important that you go with how you feel inside. And I'm validating anybody that's moving this quickly right out of the gate, it's a problem. And I'm not saying that she's a narcissist, but it's definitely problematic. There's definitely boundary pushes here. Um, and you can slow things down. I would encourage you to slow things down. So Holly says, Dana, help. I feel so alone. I feel cursed by narcissism. It has destroyed my life. Oh, I totally get that feeling. And, you know, I think most people feel that way after these relationships end, especially, and they look back and they're like, no, this has been my whole life, like my friendships, my family life, my relationships, like everything has always been abusive or problematic, and it's not right and it's not fair. And it's hard, it's so difficult to try to pick up the pieces and move forward, but you really, really can. And many people do every single day. There's lots of people that are starting over and getting a better understanding of themselves and their feelings and their um, boundaries and healthy people and all of that. And you know at every age, at every age, their 70s, their 80s, their 90s, like it's never too late to just start over and to start to realize that you deserve more, and that you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. I mean, these are kind of the fundamentals of how we treat other people. And to start meeting some of those more quality people out there. I'm a big fan of meetup.com. I've probably heard me talk a lot about them, but they're great, and it can be a really great way to go about meeting much better meeting new people in general, and developing new hobbies and trying to cultivate this life. Because when our life is blown apart by this, kind of the beauty in that is that we can then kind of look around all of that rubble that surrounds us, and we can take it piece by piece, and we can make this conscious decision on which pieces that we're going to pick up and rebuild with. And it's incredibly powerful. So I know that you're in a lot of pain, but you're not alone, and you really can move forward in this and build a much better life. You really can. Let's see. Maria, great question, asks, how would you explain having amazing feelings for somebody you just met? Isn't that love bombing? Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question. There's this difference between kind of infatuation or love bombing. And infatuation is a very normal part of the beginning stages of a relationship. It's when, we want to text and call and speak to this person all the time, and we're thinking about them all the time. We're, uh, we're very preoccupied with them. And it's very, that even that kind of idealization of they seem so perfect is part of that infatuation cycle. Where it becomes problematic is if those feelings are then being used to manipulate the other person. So if the if we're like, oh, I really want to talk to this person all the time, I think too, kind of realizing that even though we might feel like that we don't have to necessarily act on it, that it's still important that we keep our hobbies, our friendships, the other things in our life, and that we don't become all consumed by this person. So kind of that's part of it. But then the other part of it is with love bombing, it's very boundary pushing, it's very one-sided. where the emotional manipulator is doing everything in their power to kind of get their target, to rope their target in, to get them into bed, to get them, to give them money or a place to stay or these kinds of things. And um, you know, normally the best defense for love bombing is to slow things down. Generally, most manipulators will either then like double or triple up their efforts, and then you can kind of see it for what it is, or they'll go away. So because they don't like boundaries, because they have, they're trying to, they've got an agenda, and if you know we don't meet their agenda, then they get frustrated and bored and they move on quickly. So healthy boundaries is the best defense in setting the pace, the best defense. Yep. Kendra says the best way to test a narcissist is to take back your power, tell them no, and see how they react. Yeah. Telling them no, like setting a boundary. Most my two relationships, they were very covert. Like they were very charming, they were very likable. But the times that I did see problematic stuff surface was when I tried to set a boundary. If they were driving like actually both of them drove like absolute maniacs. And when I would say like, can you please slow down? Or I would get really panicked. They would get really, really upset. And so those little flashes of emotion would happen when I would try to set a boundary. Or um, I'm trying to think of some other times. Just disagreeing with them, they can get really upset really fast. And then again, just knowing too that if you start to experience something weird, projection, triangulation, snarky little comments, kind of them giving you like being brutally honest all the time, um, yelling, screaming, cussing, belittling, uh, snarky little put downs, and then paying attention to how you feel afterwards. Do you feel like, something's off? Do you feel hurt? Do you feel ground down? These are all really big signs, and to pay attention to that. The Lilith says, I'm noticing kind of narcish behavior in my friends too. Yeah. Very common for when a person, their eyes start opening to this kind of what problematic behavior is, that you start seeing it. I mean, like you see it for what it is, and you see it all around you. And this is kind of, again, goes back to where like healthy boundaries and deal breaker stuff come into play. And so if you've got a friend that's got some kind of like questionable or problematic behavior, how do they respond when you set boundaries? And do they respect them, or do they fight you on them, and do they try to put you down, and do they try to, how do they react to them? If they don't react well to them, then that's a sign. And then you've got to figure out, okay, at what point does this become a deal breaker for me? Oh, Kendra says, yeah, every time I asked him how he knew I was his soulmate, he would say, because I just know I love you and I accept you for you, because I'm in love with you. I don't see how those other guys treated you so bad. Yeah, that's a big, that's so common. They come across as so sympathetic and caring, and, uh, like their love for us could just somehow squeeze together all of our broken pieces. And that's a problem. And so I would also really encourage people to not open up about being abused, at least for like the first month. this is about valuing your emotions and your time, and you've been through a lot. And even though you might want to talk about it and you might want to tell somebody, the next person, I've really been through a lot, like please just be good to me. But that's chumming the waters for sharks is what that is. And manipulative and abusive people will latch onto that like you wouldn't believe, and that will really be twisted and used against you. So really, it's a vulnerability to open up and share something that's so personal and so raw within you. And that's something that somebody else needs to really earn. So like I said, I would really encourage you to wait at least a month before you start to open up about kind of what you've been through. Okay, Maria, great point. Maria says, I see some good narc behaviors as well in friends, putting themselves first, expecting their needs to get met, saying no with great ease. As a former severe codependent, I needed to add some narcish ways. So let's talk about that for a second. So there's a concept called healthy narcissism. So if you think about narcissism and codependency, okay, on a scale, think about it in terms of a scale of like self-orientation, how we are in relation to ourselves and then to other people. There's kind of, if you think of it like a number line ranging from like minus 10 to plus 10, and minus 10 being, let's say, like the over giving side, like the codependent side, and then the 0 to plus 10 being the overtaking or like the narcissistic side. There's kind of this range in the middle. So let's say from like minus 1 or 2 to plus 3 on the side. Okay. So there's just kind of this narrow little range there. And healthy narcissism kind of falls in that in that range, in that, for sure, in that 0 to like plus 3 type range. And healthy narcissism is this idea of, why not me, why not now? And we need that degree of narcissism of, sure, I can do this, to be able to get out of bed in the morning, to go after our goals, to feel like we're capable and worthy of happiness and moving forward in life. Like that degree is needed. Further down that narcissism spectrum, that's when it starts becoming more problematic, because then it moves from, it's not a why not me, it's because it starts off with like why not me, but why not you, like, you know and then it moves to, it's kind of more of a me versus you, and then it moves to me at the expense of you. And so that me versus you and that me at the expense of you is when it becomes really problematic. And that's not healthy. So the me versus you, like that attitude of competition, there's a time and place for that, right? If you're playing sports, if you're maybe in business, if you're playing a game with somebody, I don't know, like that level of competition, there's a time and place for it. But when a person's bringing that attitude of competition into their friendships and relationships and that stuff, that's when it becomes really problematic, because what's needed in a relationship or a friendship is that attitude of cooperation, not the attitude of competition. Like you're supposed to both be on the same team, pulling on the same rope in the same direction. It's the attitude of cooperation. So, but when a lot of us that struggle with being overgivers, when we first realize, oh my gosh, I didn't like, you just wake up to all of this. Like, I've been so incredibly manipulated. I've been so incredibly overgiving and allowing. And I didn't realize that this was a problem. I thought I was just being a kind, loving, considerate partner. When we wake up to this and we're like, okay, I need to start setting some boundaries and for how I will and will never be treated again. And um, it's very normal for people to, because it's learning a new skill. It's like learning to ride a bike or anything else. It's trial and error. And so what they oftentimes will do is they struggle with being assertive. They feel guilty for saying no. They feel guilty for walking away. They feel guilty for not continuing to be a target of abuse, really, because they feel guilt. They just it's being assertive is takes practice, and it feels very uncomfortable at first. And so what oftentimes happens is they struggle with setting a boundary, and then they go the exact opposite, and they go very extreme to where they become really harsh and kind of belittling, or kind of just lashing out almost, because I think in many ways it's easier to lash out at somebody than it is to just be assertive. But it's, it takes practice. So yeah, I guess I hope that that helps, like realizing that there's kind of this zone of like healthy narcissism, that to realize, yeah, you can say no, you can set boundaries, you can expect to get your needs met, you can expect to have goals, it's okay to put yourself first, these kinds of things. This is healthy. This is healthy. But for so many of us that have lived our life on the way opposite side of the spectrum, it doesn't feel healthy. It feels incredibly narcissistic, because we've been told, or we bought into the message that we come last, everybody else comes first, uh, that we're selfish to even think that a good life is out there for us, or that we could set goals, or you know that our job was to just take care of everybody else. It's it's a totally different way when we start realizing all this. It's very eye opening. It's just a very different way of thinking. Dana says, I think it's when I confronted and had more of a voice of my own and questioned things more, is when the belittling and put downs came more often. He didn't like anyone questioning him. Yeah, that's very common. And, in that book, The Respect Me Rules, it talks about that of, um, oftentimes if we start setting boundaries with a manipulative, controlling person, there's a solid chance that they will leave, because that's not the dynamic that they're looking for. Like, they want to be in charge, they want to run the show, it's their way or the highway. And if we start having an issue with that and expect to be treated like an equal, or to have an equal say, that does not sit well, because that's not what they want. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Yeah, Missouri Cowboy says, I like this. The whole why not me, why not you? Yeah, it's nurturing, supportive, nurturing, supportive awesomeness. Yeah. And it's kind of that attitude of abundance, of we don't need to be competitive. Like, there's enough to go around. Like, you can achieve your goals and your wants and your needs, and so can I. And we don't need to tear each other down in the process. Like, it's fine, you know. And again, like, it's normal to feel competitive and about certain things in certain areas. I'm in this writers group. Here's a little side story about this. I'm in this writers group, and mm, excuse me, hold on. And they were talking the other day. People, oh my gosh, no, writers are so like, oh my, I can see why writers drink, because it is seriously so, like, it just kicks up all of these insecurities of, you know, creating something and wanting to put it out there, and is this good enough, and what are people going to think, and this other writer is writing more than I am, and oh my gosh, I'm a failure, and how come I only put out one book in a year and they're putting out a book in a month, and I'll never do this. And it's just all of this like self-doubt and intense shame spiral. It's awful. And so somebody posted a cartoon in there the other day, and they said, so many of us, we start looking around at what other people, what other writers are doing. and we think, oh my goodness, they just have it all figured out and they're so amazing. And, who am I? Who am I to be writing a book? I feel like I shouldn't be here and that I'm not a real writer. And so they had this cartoon in there of kind of what it felt like when we're feeling so insecure like that. Like we get in the cartoon was this person getting to a table and having a cake that was really plain. It didn't have any frosting or candles on it. And then the other person had this amazing cake that was like 3 layers and different colors of frosting and candles. And the person's looking at their cake thinking, oh my goodness, I just feel so inept and not good enough. And they said, that this is how it feels on the writer side of it. But to your audience, to people that are reading your books, they get there and they're like, oh, cool, 2 cakes. Like they don't even see it the same way that we see it at all. And I think it's so true with so many things in life where we get so competitive because we're looking around, but especially with anything creative or with business, we can feel so insecure or inadequate, but then other people are like, oh hey, this is so awesome, there's 2 of you know so I liked that. I thought that was a good little analogy. Yeah, Inner Fire says, Dana often talks about taking things slow. This is great because it really tests many things and it tends to tell a lot. Yeah, it really does. Okay, let me see here. Truth Seeker says, yes, there was a lot of destructive programming and shaming and blaming when I was assertive. Yeah. I think it really just boils down to realizing that it's okay and healthy for you to have boundaries. And that's a it's so easy to doubt ourselves because if we've been so used to not having that, it feels like somebody was saying earlier in the live stream, you know, like how do I get past that guilt of like walking away or saying no? And it feels like we're doing something wrong by having boundaries, but you're not. It's just a brand new skill set and it takes time. And Kevin's talking about going back to college and his anxiety about it. And he's saying, I think college would be a whirlwind and probably cause me to be re traumatized. Well, Kevin, too, thing is, college will always be there. And if you're feeling that it's going to be too much for you right now, and I'm not sure where you are in college, if this would be like your first semester of your freshman year, or if you'd be going in, you know, to junior year or a master's program or what, but to do what you feel comfortable with. So if it feels like it would be too much, then maybe this isn't the semester that you start, or maybe if you do start, maybe you just take a few classes, and maybe you take a few classes that interest you and that you think that you can handle with ease. Okay, he's saying he wants to transfer from a 2 year to a 4 year. If you can take a few classes at a community college that are not going to be triggering for you, and if you want to go there, He says, I can't read books though. What's going on with that? Why can't you read books? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? While you're typing, like your brain is not working right. Okay, it's overloaded. Okay, it's overloaded with trauma. Are you finding that you have are you saying that you're having a hard time concentrating? Because that's very, very normal. If you're having a hard time concentrating and focusing and all that, then you know what, Kevin? Maybe you do take another semester off. He says, yeah, I can't concentrate. Yeah. And it might just be too soon, you know? And, or you could do, like I said, you could do like one or two classes. You don't have to do four or five. You could always talk to the instructor ahead of time, and you could do something like see if you can get extra time on tests, those kinds of things. There is kind of this window where you can drop a class and I think still get a refund and still, not have it go on your transcript. So that would be something to look into too. Like, when are the drop dates for classes? And I've I've dropped so many classes in college, it's not even funny. So, you just gotta it's part of just knowing yourself and knowing your limits. And um you know it's okay if you're not ready to go, and it's okay if you decide that you do want to go, but we support you either way. He says the drop dates are for before school starts. They normally do drop dates that are like a week or so after school starts, so people can see if they really want to be in that class. Okay, let me scroll up here. Hope asks, any advice for a narcissistic mom that won't help you with getting into college, like won't give you her info for the FAFSA? Um, you might be able to, I think it depends if she claims you as a dependent or not. So I think if she doesn't claim you as a dependent, and I'm not, maybe even if she does, you can get loans and stuff and grants under your own name. I would contact the financial aid department and let them know that I would just say, you don't have really, I don't have much of a relationship with my mother. She's not going to give me her info, and see what, okay, she does claim you as a dependent. Yeah, I would contact FAFSA and see if you can just get loans and stuff under your own social security number. Missouri Cowboy says, "Oh, Kevin," he says, "I'm 62 and I haven't decided what I want to be when I grow up yet." LOL. Yeah. He says, "I'm giving myself until 12/22 to fully commit to college again. That will be 18 months and no contact. It's so true. It's with kind of reinventing ourselves, it's kind of figuring out like who we're going to be at this different chapter in our life. And there is no like I don't know. I To me, I feel sorry for people that like they knew when they were 8 years old that they were going to be a fireman. And that's what they did, and that's all they've ever done. Like part of me, I guess I'm part of like a little bit jealous or envious of that. They had that amount of clarity so young, and that's what they've done. But then part of me, I'm like, oh, that makes me sad because it's such a big world out there, and there's so many things to do that I can't even imagine just doing one thing and then that's it. So I think it's fun. Why not explore and try different things and see kind of and just kind of follow what pulls you. True. Truth Seeker says, yeah, reinventing ourselves after their projections. Yep. Oh, thank you. Narcissist Free and Happy says, hi, Dana. It's Anna from Manchester, England. I hope you had a great 40th birthday the other week. Yeah, I did. It was pretty mellow, which is always nice. Didn't do anything super over the top. It was nice. Just hung out and had a bonfire and spent some time on the lake. It's my ideal day. Thank you for asking, though. Okay, let me scroll up here. Kristen says, I continued to go to school full time throughout the discard and divorce. So tough. I'm graduating in 2 weeks. Sweet relief is in sight. Oh, I'm so glad. 2 weeks. Oh, you're so close. You're so close. Yay. Yay for you. That is huge. I hope then that you can take some time and just breathe and do something that's extra loving and supportive for yourself because that's a lot. Yep, so true. Elba says, my dreams aren't the same as they once were. The things that used to be important to me have changed. Life is now a blank canvas. Yeah. Gamer Christina says, I'm dating a new guy. Are there any red flag tests you could suggest? Um, I can't think of any. It's not so much about tests, it's more about paying attention to how you feel because oftentimes, red flags in general are not seen, they're felt. And I think that's where a lot of us go wrong is we think I'm going to wait until I see some more red flags. Like we're waiting for something really obviously problematic that we can point to and say that's a problem. If the reality is if we're waiting until things are that severe, then we're probably waiting too long. And so many of red flags are there. It's that feeling that we feel deep inside. It's when if you're out on a date with a guy and he's staring a little bit too long at the waitress, or he makes a weird comment about your children, or he starts texting you nonstop and he's signing the texts, he's calling you honey or babe or signing little kissy faces. And sometimes it might not seem like a big deal or even something that's even a problem. It's just that vibe that you get where you're like, that doesn't sit right with me. And so other people might not pick up on this, but it's important that you pay attention to your gut instincts. In my situation with Steve, So I got out of that relationship with Jack, and that just, oh man, it just messed with my head and my heart for like a while. And I didn't date anybody for like a solid year or so. And I thought that I had healed enough because it wasn't I wasn't feeling emotionally devastated, I guess is what it was. And so I thought I was fine. And so I began dating this one guy. That lasted about a year, and then um you know, it had its own set of issues, and then that ended, and then I began very quickly dating Steve. And it's there were things right away that were off. And what, like, for example, like when I met him, he was married. And he told me, he's like, I'm married and pretty much title only. I don't love her. My marriage has been over for a long time. It's like we're two friends that live under the same roof. She's a great woman, but it's just not there. And but I've tried leaving before, and she's just really manipulative and blah blah blah. And I had known him for several years before we started dating. And um, like he taught some classes that I had taken, and that's how I knew him. So it wasn't like we were friends or anything. Like I knew him at that level. And I told him, I said, well, I'm not going to date a married man. You need to file papers and move out. If your marriage is over, your marriage is over, but don't end it because of me. Like, you need to do what you need to do. Well, he did. He filed papers and he moved out. And I thought, wow, okay, then that must really mean that he's serious about me. And I mean, and I kept asking friends. I was like, is it like this feels off? Like, I don't, this doesn't, it seems like too much too soon. And I don't know why all of a sudden he is so into me, because I've known him for a long time, or for a few years, and he's never shown any interest in me. But like all of a sudden he's interested in me. And it just something's off. And everybody kept saying, oh well, it was easy to justify. People were like, oh well, I've been in a marriage where my ex and I, we were friends but lived under the same roof, and we had no real reason to get divorced because we weren't looking to meet anybody. And it was easy to justify. And um I doubted my own judgment, and so I listened to them. And it's not to blame them, but it's to point out how important it is that we listen to our own, like, intuition and our own perception and judgment of the situation, because we're picking up things that other people might not be picking up on. And I really wanted I really wanted to believe that he was being sincere. And I doubted my judgment and my perception of events because of everything that happened with Jack. So um you know and that was the big lesson for me with that, is to get to the place where you really do trust your own judgment of situations and people. Let's see, Truth Seeker was describing love bombing and described it as having no depth, and they can't provide good explanations. Yeah, so much of it, with that love bombing, is it's a lot of false flattery, it's a lot of words. And because they don't know you, that's why it lacks the depth. It's very superficial. You're so beautiful, you're so funny, but they can't really pinpoint, like, because there's no depth there. So yeah, I think I agree, that is a really great way to describe it. Great point. Maria says, I grew up feeling confused, and that feeling was so familiar. I literally picked and maintained relationships where I felt confused. Now, confusion is my first red flag, always. Yeah, I like that. That's a big one. And if we've grown up in a home where problematic behavior was glossed over, or minimized or presented as somehow it was excused for whatever reason. Oh, that's just your father. He had a bad childhood. Or that's just your mother. She's just really hormonal right now. Instead of people realizing and saying, no, that's how they're acting is not okay. And you don't deserve to be treated that way. And I'm sorry. You know, like if it's not brought up to us to realize like there is no excusing it and it's a problem and it's not okay and we shouldn't be being treated that way, then as we get older and we start dating, if problematic behavior surfaces, we just tend to have this attitude of like everything is workable, everything is permissible. I just need to stay here and get dragged through the mud because that's what has been our past. So Helene says, "What is your opinion about a guy who love bombs right after he got out of a serious relationship? He said he wanted to pursue something with me like a week after he got out of his 3-year relationship." Here's my take on this. I think first of all, anytime anybody comes running full steam right out of the gate like that, it's a problem. And I would encourage you to look at it from the standpoint of you, not so much is his behavior problematic, but like what would it take for you to value your time and your emotions in yourself? So like for example, for me, I don't date guys that are like fresh out of a divorce or a major relationship. I really think that people need like a solid year of being single to heal from that. So I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole because I don't want to be somebody's rebound and I don't want to get hurt. So that's why I wouldn't even entertain that idea one moment because I value my time, I value my emotions. And with love bombing, especially if there's love bombing with it, my the other part of me would think, okay, this guy has issues being single and he's trying to, he doesn't want to be alone. He wants to be in a relationship. And like I want somebody that wants to be with me. I don't want somebody that like needs to be with me, or that's coming on so hot and heavy like this. Like it's just too much. And people like that, it's they're not going to be okay with if they're going to be making their whole life about you, they're not going to be okay with you having a life outside of them. Savan, did I say that right? I have your name written down on a piece of paper, but I don't have the paper handy. It says, could love bombing be a symptom of immaturity rather than a red flag of abuse? I know that either way it's a problem, but we didn't know any better either. Yeah, I mean, it can for sure be a sign of image. It's just like you said, it's a problem either way. Either they're very immature or it's a sign of an emotional manipulator. But either one isn't workable. I mean, you can't have a relationship with somebody who's got the emotional maturity of a 12-year-old, you know? So it's a problem either way you dice it. Helene says, yeah, this guy, he recently told me he doesn't want to pursue anything with me after all the love bombing and saying he wants exclusivity. So it's a push pull dynamic now. I blocked him out of my life. Yeah, it sounds just like a bunch of games and nonsense for sure. Good call on blocking him. Andy says, I never knew guy friends could be within the cluster B spectrum. I don't think a lot of people have a lookout. People tend to think about like abusive relationships being uh, a significant other. They don't think about it being in terms of friends. But, you know, anybody can be abusive, and abusive people come in all walks of life, and it's the same dynamic with whatever role they play. If they're a significant other, a parent, a child, a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, a church leader, you name it. Lizard says, "What do you do when a person says they have been hurt, they have walls, and say I'm not sure I can ever let them down for anyone, and that I am not relationship material? Is this a red? Is this a sign?" Yeah, yeah. Okay, again, either way, it's that kind of stuff is either a pity ploy, like kind of the whole baby bird with a broken wing, which a lot of emotional manipulators use to get to lure their target into their target's like, oh my goodness, I would never hurt you. I'd be so good for you. I can totally relate. I've been abused too. You know, thinking that they found somebody safe. But then in reality, they turn out to be a total nightmare because they're abusive, and like they might not even see it, but they're abusive. So it could be a sign of that, or it could be a sign of somebody's telling you that they're not relationship material. It's a good idea to believe them and to not try to take on the role of like, I'll fix you, because then that kind of creates this whole codependent dynamic. A person really needs to have their stuff figured out to the point where, like, you know, if you're thinking like, okay, if a person's like, I'm not relationship material, then they need to bench themselves and do some work before they try to date again. Not start telling people I'm not relationship material, I've been hurt before, and then expect other people to fix them. Like that's not fair, and it's not going to work either. Yeah. Yeah, there's no shortcut. Truth Seeker says, yeah, either way, it's not healthy. If they are broken, it's not the other person's job to heal them. They have to heal themselves. Ugh. Lizard says, yeah, correct. He says he does not want to talk to me. So once again, stringing along. Yep. Kristen says, she says, haha, yes, I am currently benched. Yeah, I had to do the same thing after Jack. And I think I told you guys, I was so upset. I was so hurt, but I was so angry. And again, I had the benefit, I found out so much stuff all at once that it was very clear that I'd gotten tangled up with a con artist. And I really felt like, no, I'm not going to let this guy steal any more of my joy or my time or my happiness. F him. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to start dating again. And I went on a date with a really nice guy way too soon. It was like several weeks after. And we were out having a drink. Um, and this girl and her friend come up and ask me if I knew where like a certain place was. And I didn't. And so they were like, okay, thanks. And then they went on their merry way. I was such a wreck. I was like interrogating him. I was like, did you know those girls? What was this? Because Jack was introducing me to people he'd been sleeping with. Like my whole life with him had been a lie. And so my whole mind, my reality was so screwed up. I didn't realize how much so until that moment. And I ended up leaving that date and just realizing I have major issues with trust, and I am a hot mess. Like I need to bench myself. And I had a couple other guys that were like, yeah, again, the same thing, like, oh, just telling me everything I want to hear. I'd never hurt you, blah blah. And I was just like, there's something really wrong with my thinking right now. I just don't trust other people, and I just need to be left alone. I have no desire to date. I just want to be left alone, and I'm a hot mess, and I'm out of commission for a while, and I'll be back when I can, but can't do this. So, and it's okay. It's okay to kind of bench yourself until till you recover enough that you can want to get out there and kind of make some new friends and meet some new people. Huh, Maria, that's great. Says her life finally turned around for the better when she became the project to work on. Funny how that works. Yeah, it's so true. And doing self-care is so huge. For those of you that are struggling, they're like, I don't have I'm so depressed, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't work on myself. I can't, like, I just can't even think about getting back out there. I would strongly encourage you, take the time right now and just focus on being extra good to yourself and whatever that might mean, whether it's taking a hot bath, whether it's getting lost in a good book, um, watching some fun videos on YouTube, playing with a pet, um, just doing anything that brings peace into your life. It's it starts with being good to yourself. And then Maria says, I have the opposite problem. I bench myself as a way of getting out there. Oh, to avoid getting out there. I need to stop benching myself, damn it. Yeah. Well, I think, and here's the other thing, I see a lot of people, myself included, where they, their way of getting back out there is, especially if they don't have a lot of friends, if they're new to an area, or this relationship has kind of killed off all their friendships. So they just start dating. Like, they're lonely, and so they start dating. And that's a really terrible reason to start dating. So I would strongly encourage you guys, check out meetup.com. Get some hobbies, start meeting some new people. It's great for several reasons, because it'll give you practice with people watching, with boundary setting, with paying attention, with being able to more like walk away from stuff that's problematic. It's so much easier to walk away from a problematic friendship than it is a problematic relationship. So it can it can just really be good at kind of getting your feet wet and getting back out there into life. And um, then after you kind of have that piece figured out, then maybe consider dating if you want to even go down that road. Ha, that's hilarious. Um, Siobhan says, I've been doing random picks on Netflix. I close my eyes and I just click. I've seen some terrible movies, but I enjoyed the recharge time. That is hilarious. I love it. Yeah, Little Miss says, the most rewarding thing I've ever done is to work on me. Yeah. For me, it's really been, oh boy, I think exploring the concept of like self love and like self forgiveness, and um, making time to have fun, and making time to like cultivate hobbies has been, it's something I still struggle with, but realizing that I'm worthy of that, and that I need to do that. Hope says, I just sit here contemplating what my next step in life is going to be. Yeah. Yeah. And here's the thing too with that is, sometimes The next step is we don't have to see like the whole road in front of us. You just kind of need to see the next few steps. And so, moving forward with the clarity that you do have and having taking comfort in the peace of knowing that the additional clarity will come when the time is right. Like, all you have to do is just take the next step in the direction that you have clarity on. That's it. That's all you have to do. It's so nice when you think of it that way, right? Like, you don't have to have all of the answers today. It's just taking that next step. And sometimes taking that next step means standing still, and that's okay too. Oh my goodness. Missouri Cowboy says, I planted 17 varieties of sweet potatoes, all for me. No one here to tell me that's stupid or what a waste of time. They are beautiful and nutritious, and I love them. that's that's awesome. I didn't even realize that there were 17 varieties of sweet potatoes. I am impressed. But good for you. Potatoes are good. Um, that's a Maria says, Dana, can you share the differences with how you feel with your current boyfriend versus how you feel with Jack and Steve? Sure. With Jack, with Jack and Steve, I both had the feeling that something was really off about them from like day one when they first started showing interest in me. And there were a few little concerning things, that they both said like right away, but they both really played the part of Prince Charming really, really well. And they played that part the whole time. So that idealized stage for me lasted the whole time because, I think Jack, his intention was to try to get money out of me you know, that I didn't have. So, um, but he thought I don't know, he thought I was lying that I was going to get this huge divorce settlement, which I wasn't going for. Um, and then I don't even know. Steve was just, I think it was, I don't know. I don't know. I think with Steve, he knew that the guy I dated before him had a really high end sports car. And this is like, it's crazy. Like, I really think for him, the attraction to me was that some other guy that had a lot of money was interested in me. So that somehow must have meant that I like was valuable. I don't know. It was just, but it literally was like the moment he found out that my ex had this really awesome sports car, that he became interested in me. So, um, again, like the feeling that something was really off with both of them. With Travis, it's not that. Um, you know, but we were texting and stuff a lot, like in the beginning, but I made it a point to not make that my whole life. And, um, you know, we didn't start spending like every waking moment together. Like, we still each had our own lives and still do. I mean, I spend a lot of time over here and spend a lot of time with them. I enjoy his company. Um, and we get along really well. There were times, I mean, there are times where I still kind of, that anxiety flares up. What if he's, texting somebody else? What if he's, those kinds of things. But the reality is, if he is, or if he were to be doing something squirrely and I were to find out, then I would leave. And so I guess for me, it's more about just trusting myself that I know that I can keep myself safe, and um, that I'm okay with leaving. So I hope that, excuse me, I hope that kind of answers your question. But it was hard. It was hard at first. I really struggled with feeling okay enough to kind of like let my guard down and get to know a guy. Yeah, Inner Fire and Maria are talking about like dating coaches and these kinds of things. And Inner Fire says, yeah, they don't tend to teach you that the answer is all within you. And that's so true. So true. Bear asks, does Templeton approve of Travis? Yes, Templeton is Travis's cat. So, yes, I take no responsibility for for that cat. Where is he? He's normally up here when I'm doing my live stream. Yes, he's very good to both of them. And yeah. Yes, Inner Fire says these coaches, they don't inspire you to love yourself. They want you to need them. I think that's right. Buy my course. Right. That's so true. And I think you're absolutely right. Like the end of the day, so many answers, especially when it comes to like interpersonal stuff, it truly does boil down to turning inward enough to be in tune enough with your emotions that to know how to know how problematic things feel for you and to know how like to just understand like the different emotions because all of these emotions they carry messages for us, you know, anger or pain carries the message of don't do this, this causes pain. Just like we have physical pain, you know, you touch a hot stove, you get burned. That that physical pain is a message of don't do that, you're going to be hurt. Same thing when we're experiencing pain from certain people in our life, it's that message of stay away from that person, they're going to hurt you. When we experience resentment, oftentimes anger, um, those are more mild feelings that point that have the message of there's been a boundary that's been violated. And so if we can realize, oh, that's interesting. Like I'm finding myself feeling really tense, really like irritated, really kind of resentful towards this person. This is a boundary violation. But here's the thing too with boundaries is other people don't know where our boundaries are. So it's up to us to be assertive to let them know. And you know, it just takes practice. It's an ongoing process. And paying attention to how how you feel. It's very, very game changing and insightful when you can do this. When you're around anybody, this is what people watching can be kind of fun to just pay attention to. Like maybe I feel too comfortable around this stranger. Like, are they trying to get me to like them? Are they being too friendly? Are they being too kind of charming? Are they laying it on too thick? It just and it takes time to sort all of this stuff out of like what's real and like what's manipulative, you know. And sometimes too, and people problematic people might slide under your radar. Like there's still been a handful that have come under my radar, and all I can do is, you know, when you see that happening is to just be like, Okay, I didn't see it then. It's been 8 weeks or whatever. I see it now. Now I got a lesson learned. They're out of my life. And then you walk on. And to try to not get so down on yourself for not seeing it sooner because it just takes practice. And so I guess that's where it kind of comes down to like forgiving yourself for not seeing some of the stuff sooner and just realizing that you were manipulated and that you're a good decent person who doesn't see the world and in any other way. It's going to take practice and to love yourself, you know, despite of mistakes you might make with all of this. Yep. Dana says, I think what's helped me know I'm not the narcissist or to blame is that I'm in therapy looking at healing myself while he's already out and remarried, also quickly. Yes. Yep. I think that's so true. If you are at the point where you're like, okay, I see some problematic behavior, like what, like maybe I wasn't perfect in this either. So what did I do that was problematic? And then realizing, okay, you know what? That's something that I would want to change, that I want to work on. And this is how I would do things differently. Because it's not so much the behavior, it's like if a person's not willing to change that problematic behavior. And so many of us, everybody's got stuff that they can work on. I mean, that's a whole lifelong process. It should be, right? Like a lifelong process, anyhow, to continually examine boundaries and deal breakers and kind of our approach to different situations. But like a true narcissist doesn't have that level of awareness. Like the needle just doesn't move very far. If they do change, that kitten, they don't turn from a porcupine into a kitten. Like it just doesn't change that much. So, with that said, we're getting close to the 3 hour mark here. How about we take some time for just relaxing and just being in the moment and to just relax and close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. And take a deep breath in and let it out. And take a deep breath in and let it out. Just relax your body as much as you can. Like it's a giant spaghetti noodle. And just let that tension just melt down your arms and down your legs and just into the floor. Visualize a white, healing light. Just that white light of healing and health and happiness and everything good, just filling you up inside, getting bigger and bigger, brighter and brighter. Visualize that light, that healing, awesome light, and send that light and love to others. Kind of give them a, I guess, energetic hug and do the same for yourself. And when you're ready, come on back. Open your eyes. And I hope you come back with the feeling of peace and relaxation. Oh, I love that. Bite says, this might sound weird, but a healthy relationship is always an equal exchange of energy. There's a balance. I love that. I love that. Very true. So, on that note, thank you everybody so much for being here and for supporting each other and, you know, just everything that you guys do. I know that the struggle can be real, but you guys are warriors. And I just sincerely wish you all of the health and healing and happiness possible. And a lot is possible. It really is. So, on that note, just going to send you guys lots of love. So, you are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So, take care. And I will see you next week. Okay. Bye. Maybe. Did I turn this off? I can't tell.